Good evening and welcome to The Big Question on NDTV Profit. I'm Vikram Oza, and this evening we're talking about your retirement money, your Provident Fund, and why the government thinks you should not get your hands on it too soon. The EPFO, the Employees Provident Fund Organisation, has rolled out sweeping reforms that change how India's salaried workers access their Provident Fund and pension. So now you can make a full Provident Fund withdrawal only after 12 months of unemployment. Earlier, you could do it in 2 months of unemployment. And pension withdrawals, they get pushed even further, 36 months after retirement. And for the first time, at least 25% of your Provident Fund must stay locked in for life. So the new rule book also brings in a uniform 12-month service requirement, easier digital transfers with no employer approval, and that's an important one. Also, a higher 5 lakh rupee auto-claim limit and more flexibility also to withdraw for education as well as marriage. On paper, the system looks smoother, it looks smarter. But the core idea is to stop people from dipping into their retirement savings at least too early. And here's why the government says it is necessary. The government says that half of all EPF members end up with less than 20,000 rupees at the final settlement. 3 out of 4 have less than 50,000 rupees left in their account. The government also says that nearly 87% have under 1 lakh rupees left when they finally close their accounts. And that 75% of pension withdrawals, they happen within just 4 years. The span of 4 years is another crucial one to remember. So are these EPFO reforms a much-needed push to secure India's retirement future? Or do they unfairly tie down workers who need access to their own savings, especially in tough times? And that's our debate tonight. EPFO reforms, are they stifling employee savings, or are they shielding the future of employees? And to discuss this very important question, we have with us 4 voices, 5 voices. They know the world of savings, pensions and policy inside out, and they're joining us on the show. Well, tonight we have Ramesh Krishnamurthy. Ramesh Krishnamurthy is the Central Provident Fund Commissioner. Mr. Murthy, it's great to have you with us this evening. Pankaj Matpal is a CFP. He is founder and CEO of Optima Money Managers. Great to have you with us as well. Certified Financial Planner Harshvardhan Rungta with us as well, and it's great that he's with us. We get several perspectives going tonight. We've got Ketan Das, Business Head for Provident Fund at Finrai Technologies. And for the legal perspective, Vinay Joy, partner at Ketan & Company, is on our panel as well. But let me begin with you, Mr. Krishnamurthy. The government says too many people are dipping into their PF. They're dipping into their PF too early, and the data is supporting that as well, because like the government is pointing out, half of all members end up with less than 20,000 rupees in their kitty at final settlement. But does tightening access from 2 months to 12 months, does it risk punishing everyone for the mistakes that a few may be making? Mr. Krishnamurthy.
Good evening, and thanks for having me here. First of all, there is no question of any punishment. I think the entire this thing appears to be negatively worded. Actually, it is something very simple. As you rightly pointed out, EPF is designed for social security. This money that is being contributed by the employer and the employee goes to the Provident Fund, and part of that is diverted to the pension fund in case the worker's earnings are less than 15,000 rupees. Now, what happens is that till today, till the CBT decided to simplify, there were multiple provisions which governed withdrawal, which is called partial withdrawal, under various sections for marriage, for education, for miscellaneous provisions like cut in electricity, or there was even one section called 68HH for unemployment of 1 month. So there were so many provisions with different limits. Some of them had 5 years of service limit. Some of them had 7 years. In some cases, the withdrawal that you could take was only 50%. In some cases, the withdrawal was linked to your basic wage. So in many cases, what was happening was that the workers were unable to access this money. There was a lot of confusion in terms of eligibility. The end result was a lot of grievances being faced by the workers. So the government said, let us try to find out an easier way to make access available to all the PF members. And so that is why it was decided that let there be a simple system which is uniform across whether it is education or employment, because we cannot predict what are the needs, how much is the quantum of need. So let us give the full flexibility in terms of access of 100% of an eligible balance. The minimum balance concept came in because otherwise what may happen is that if you allow all the entire money to go out, then finally the worker is already, from data as you have rightly pointed out, 50% of workers don't even have any PF balance. Less than 20,000 is almost next to nothing in their kitty. So the thought process was that let us try to build for every worker a secure future by enabling him to save.
Right.
And at the same time, it was also thought that keeping in view certain exigencies, that genuinely there is a issue of if the worker is under sustained unemployment, then he should have the flexibility. So within 12 months, he can withdraw the balance 25% as well.
12 months?
Mind you,
12 months?
The 75%, Mr. If I can say that at least the 75% is freely available to him to withdraw anytime during the year.
Yes.
It is not necessarily for unemployment. It is for any reason he could have withdrawn that 75%, which earlier was even further restricted.
And let me bring up that point with our certified financial planners who are dealing with investors, with your members. Harsh, do weigh in on this. Employees being made to wait that long, especially when there is a job loss. Yes, there is that possibility. But besides that even, there could be medical emergencies. And that can strike, you never know when. So isn't the government's approach actually sidestepping today's economic reality when you can, of course, dip in, like Mr. Krishnamurthy is pointing out, that you can dip into 75% of what you've stashed away through EPFO, but there are emergency situations. Would it be okay to practice this the way EPFO is suggesting through its reforms?
So, hi Vikram. Well, see, let's look at it from two angles. The first part being that there has been relaxation and ease when you compare it with what was the provision earlier. So yes, as what Mr. Krishnamurthy has said, that there have been reforms which have become easier than what it was earlier. Now, the only point is when we're looking at a situation wherein we are saying that post you losing a job, you're going to allow a person to withdraw 75%, up to 75% under three heads. One is essential needs, the other is housing, and the third one being special circumstances. So there is a possibility for a person to withdraw money. The only challenge being there you put a cap to say that up to 75% you can withdraw and 25% will be locked in for 12 months. Now, if you look at and refer to the numbers that you just mentioned, 50%, less than 50% have a balance of less than or approximately 20,000 rupees. 1 lakh people have, 87% of people have about 1 lakh of rupees at the time of settlement. Now, if you're going to hold back 25% of that for 12 months, and if it's 20,000 rupees for that matter, or if it's 1 lakh rupees for that matter, what is the real purpose you're achieving by holding that person, until another 12 months? Wouldn't it be prudent in that case? Because as you rightly said, there could be, and if a person has lost his job, every percent of his money makes a difference. So if you have lost your job and you want some money at your disposal, 75%, great. So, really appreciate the effort that has gone into make the process easy to categorize into three simple categories, give it without asking questions, and giving up to 75% of the total value of your contribution as that of the employer. Earlier, there was a restriction on that as well.
Correct.
So great on that part, but what is that 25%? What is the real purpose of locking in 25% for another 12 months? As Mr. Krishnamurthy said, it is to make sure that they stay a little longer and there is a social security.
Yes. But Pankaj Matpal, I want to ask you about the 100% withdrawal of the eligible amount. And that could perhaps increase liquidity. But then there is this 25%, which is compulsory lock-in. So does the argument for liquidity, does it hold out against that, or is eligibility now just another word for restriction, you would say?
See, I'll say that contribution to APF is for a long-term goals, especially for retirement. So definitely keeping 25% minimum balance, that is a good decision. Second thing, that up to 100% of the eligible amount can be withdrawn partially. So that is also good. In case you have emergency, you need access to your funds, you can withdraw that. So both the things are equally important. One, that you have access to your funds and you can withdraw when you need it. Second thing, some minimum amount must be there in the account for a long term, because whatever is left and that will grow in a long term, so that is required. So definitely whatever reforms have been here announced are definitely in the interest of members. Yes, one point I agree with Harsh, what he said just now, that in case somebody loses a job. See, first thing, let me clarify that why we have this cooling off period. Like earlier we had 2 months and now we have the 12 months. It is required because when somebody quits a job, there are chances that the person will again get employment. So what was happening, somebody left a job and immediately after 2 months, the person withdrew his whole balance and again he became member through another employment. So in this case, that person is again starting from zero. But now, because that period has been extended to 12 months, it means there are chances that a person gets a job after 6 months, after within 12 months sometimes. It means his membership will continue. So whatever the balance was there, it will keep growing and additional amount he will keep contributing. So in long term, there will be more wealth. But the problem is, suppose a person quits a job intensely and wants to start his business. Now earlier he had access to his fund after 2 months only. He could withdraw that money and use for his business, use for his household expenses. But now knowing that he is not going into employment again, but still he has to wait for 12 months. So that is something restriction which may not be in the interest of a member. So as I said, that some rules are definitely in the interest of members, which will help them having more money for the retirement. But sometime when people want the money and there is no need to keep in the account, then also means compulsorily they have to stay invested. So that is something I think that there is.
Yes, but Mr. Krishnamurthy, there are several confusions that are coming through, and I was going through some on social media as well, and perhaps you can throw light on this. If a member stops contributing, was one question. Will the interest that is earned on that 25% lock-in, is that portion going to become taxable or not, is the question. How does EPFO address that concern that some people have?
So, first of all, Vikram, just to clarify and add to what your panelists already said.
Sure.
There is no restriction on withdrawing of 25% after that 1 year period.
Okay.
In case of unemployment. And our statistics are showing last year's net payroll data, if you see, there were over 1.25 crore rejoinees in our net payroll. Similarly, when we did an analysis for the month of April, we found out that nearly over 110,000 people who had done final withdrawal already had got a new job. So what we are seeing is that they are somehow, because of this 2-month rule, they were withdrawing their entire amount. They were losing the membership. Not only that, this was also causing them difficulty in making the pensionable service closer to that 10-year period, which is required for getting a pension. So they were not even getting pension because of withdrawal even from pension.
Sure.
So it was becoming something which was, we wanted to make sure that as we do simplification, we should also take care of the long-term security. As you know, India is now reaping the demographic dividend. Most of our youth are joining employment now. They will retire in 2055, 2060. If you don't plan from now, then what will happen is that at that period of time, when India is aging, then you will have people having issues relating to financial security. So that is the first point. Second point is that there is no issue of tax or anything like that. Interest continues to be earned on both the 75% as well as the 25%. Of course, as far as the income tax rules are concerned,
yes,
only if your contributions exceeds a particular amount permissible, which is 2.5 lakh for the employee contribution and 7.5 lakh for the employer contribution in a year.
Yes.
Only the excess on that excess taxation is there. That continues. That has got nothing to do with this.
All right, fair enough. Ketan Das, are you convinced about that? This 2-month service rule changed into a 12-month service rule for partial withdrawals. Do you think it could create any tax complications? Earlier, there was a 5-year service threshold. It kept these withdrawals tax-free. But from a tax perspective, is this going to create a new problem, even as we try to solve another, which Mr. Krishnamurthy is very ably pointing out, that we have an aging population, the demographics merit this. But tell me if we are not replacing one problem with another.
That's correct. So one clarification, if Mr. Krishnamurthy can provide some light on it, is earlier the withdrawals for marriage or education or even for your housing needs was done after the threshold of 5 years of contribution. Now that it has been reduced to 12 months or 1 year, does the partial withdrawal or the amount that we are going to claim as advance, does that become taxable?
Mr. Krishnamurthy, it's a valid question. The amount that is withdrawn, then, is that subject to taxes?
So there are two parts to it. The taxability is a thing that probably the income tax department would be best capable of answering. But I will put it from the different perspective. Now with the tax regime going to the new tax regime, where there is no, most of the taxpayers are opting for the new tax regime. There is no deduction for 80C. All this came because earlier there was a deduction for 80C, and that is why this lock-in and all these concepts had come in. Now I don't think those are all really relevant.
Fair enough. And in terms of the tax implications, it's something that we'll have to revisit. But do you see any tax problems over here in terms of what we are likely to see with the new reforms coming in, Ketan Das? Do you think there is going to be an issue on any of these fronts on the taxation front?
Right. So the tax laws state that you have to have continuous contributions for 5 years and then your entire PF corpus becomes tax-free. Like we mentioned, the 80C withdrawals are no longer applicable for old new regime, people under the new regime, but still the employer contribution, which is equal to what the employee is also contributing. The employer contribution is not part of the taxable income, so that still remains ambiguous as of now.
And from a legal lens, and Vinay, you need to step in on this. How far can the EPFO go? Because in a sense, we're telling employees what to do with their own savings. Is a 25% permanent lock-in of someone's own money even enforceable without a legal challenge, you think?
So firstly, Vikram, I think the entire purpose of the legislation is to grant a safety net to employees at the time of their retirement. And I think a host of the changes that have been made, as Mr. Krishnamurthy already outlined, are meant to make withdrawals easier for employees. So to my mind, that does actually provide them with greater benefits. Now, in terms of the lock-in that we are talking about, I think it needs to be remembered that, yes, it takes away the timeline from 2 months to 12 months. It can be seen as something that can hamper an individual's rights to be able to access their own funds. But quite honestly, the entire framework of the legislation is already that. Even until today, the partial withdrawals that you could make were for very specific reasons, were capped at certain thresholds, were subject to meeting certain eligibility criteria, a lot of which has been relaxed now. So in that sense, I don't think legally I would see that this extension of the timeline being a challenge in itself. Yes, certainly there could have been, or maybe in the fine print, there could be some provisions outlined to cover for specific situations of unemployed persons who might feel the need to access those funds on a quicker timeline. We might need to sort of look at that and how it plays out. But at least from the statistics that the CBT sort of put out,
yes,
in terms of what has already been spoken about, I think it's going to be a problem that's going to be affecting very specific individuals. Maybe the numbers might be small, but we'll have to sort of see the fine print of when that comes out in the changes to the scheme as well. In fact, even the Tax Act, even the Income Tax Act, some of the updates that will need to come to sort of allow for this to happen seamlessly. I think that's something which, like Ketan pointed out, we'll need to get some clarity on.
So meanwhile, we are still wondering, Harsh, and you tell us, because the savings culture that India has, it has been strong in the past, but do you see it weakening that merits this kind of reform? This rule seems to be a nudge to build long-term discipline when it comes to saving. Isn't that a fair goal? For those who are arguing that this is feeling restrictive, would you say it's a fair goal to achieve that EPFO has put out?
Well, Vikram, if we divide the entire country into three parts, okay, there is one section which is the major section of population in India. So we're talking about the rural sector, we're talking about, or not only rural, let's put up across investors who are not financially savvy. Okay, that's the larger portion of people who probably are the cause of concern for the EPFO, and rightly so. So that part of population they have an intent to invest, but they do not understand very complicated or modern products. So for them, EPFO becomes the place to go, the safe haven to be. You take another segment, which is the financial savvy segment of people. Now they understand the importance of saving and they're very well equipped to handle their investments on their own. So again, we're not talking about that population. Now there's a third population who are very savvy with investments, but they do not have the discipline to save for it. So there are three categories of investors in this country right now. And EPFO's objective is to provide social security and instill a sense of discipline in all sorts of investors. Now, if you take two out of these three segments that I spoke about,
yes,
fall under the category who would require some kind of discipline to be enforced upon them. There is where the EPFO comes into picture. Now, my only concern being the amounts that we are referring to and the reports suggest, as I mentioned, 50% have less than 20,000 rupees and 87% have less than 1 lakh rupee.
Yes.
What is that 25% of that going to help them after for the 12 months? Unless and until we are only looking at them coming back into the system and not cancelling their registration.
Right.
I think that 25% is only going to solve that purpose.
So will it solve it in a reasonable kind of way? Mr. Krishnamurthy, are you convinced about the argument for it?
So a simple illustration I can give, we just used a worker earning 15,000 rupees. The net contribution both by employer and employee to the PF accounts is about 28,200 per year, assuming that 8.33% goes to the pension. If you compound it annually at 8%, if he doesn't withdraw anything from his corpus, then he is able to build a corpus of nearly about 14 or to 15 lakh rupees. Now, under the present provisions, we have said that 75% of that is he can withdraw without any questions asked, any time of the year, any time during his financial need. That would mean about 10.5 lakh of this amount is withdrawal by him for any financial need.
Right.
But that still leaves him with 3.5 lakh rupees at the end of 20 years. Mind you, this is a person earning only 15,000 rupees per month, which is 1,80,000 rupees per year. In future, he's really going to need that financial safety.
Yes.
So when he goes to retirement, at least he has a corpus of 3.5 lakh. If he's more financially prudent, he gets into the financial habit of saving, and he leaves his corpus in his, doesn't withdraw from his corpus, he's able to get about 14 lakh rupees. And that in our calculation may give him an annuity of close to about 8,000 or 9,000 rupees per month.
Right.
So, I mean, what we are hoping for and what we are saying is that there is a need to start working now. Otherwise, tomorrow workers, and that is our main focus, blue-collared workers, are typical workers who are earning not in the high, salary range. This is a way to sort of slowly get their social security in place. But as I said, the main objective was to make sure that they are easily able to have for their financial needs access to their PF corpus up to 75%, no questions asked, multiple times for any reason.
Fair enough.
So that kind of ability, I think we have given, and we hope that this will help them in future.
Well, that's certainly the hope. But if you look at this entire possibility right now, and perhaps I can ask you, Pankaj Matpal, if you had to choose between flexibility now and security later, which one would you pick?
So definitely, if I talk about EPF, then it is for your retirement. And here, more than the flexibility, that long-term goal is more important. At the same time, these reforms is about the flexibility as well, because if you compare with the old rules and new rules, it is providing more flexibility. So I think it's a balanced approach, flexibility for now as well as for the social security for long term. So I think that it is in the interest of members.
Well, so there it is. I mean, a new EPFO rulebook that actually promises to protect your future. It might just pinch a little bit in the present. The government is calling it financial discipline, and that's an important one because employees could call it financial handcuffs, but it's important how the government is looking at the long-term picture and is trying to infuse a certain amount of discipline when it comes to saving. The truth, perhaps, of course, lies somewhere in between, and that's a big question tonight. EPFO reforms, are they stifling employee savings or are they shielding the future of employees? I want to thank my guests for joining us, Ramesh Krishnamurthy, Pankaj Matpal, Certified Financial Planner Harshvardhan Rungta, and we've got Ketan Das and indeed Vinay Joy. Thank you very much for joining us with your perspectives on this edition of The Big Question on NDTV Profit. And it's time for me to wrap up this show, and indeed we will be back with more big questions, but they keep rising and we look forward to the interaction as well. Thank you for making the time for joining us on NDTV Profit. Good evening.